Let's take a look at some information and charts on ZRX or ZRX for Brave New Coin. So I've always loved the protocol as a trader. Obviously, we need DEX aggregation, which is what ZRX has morphed into, liquidity aggregation. I don't want my bearishness on the fundamentals of the token to be confused with bullishness on the fundamentals of the project and the protocol. Protocol is great. I don't think it's going anywhere. Matcha, the exchange, one of the best out there. I still, years later, do not understand the purpose of the token. The use case for the token doesn't make any sense, doesn't need to exist. Just that's it, end of day, end of story. I'm still concerned for the long-term health of the existence of the token. It exists in the ecosystem with a bunch of other stuff that probably doesn't need to exist. Certainly things like Uni and Sushi and Comp and Aave and everything having their own governance token has made ZRX look less bad, but fundamentally, I don't know what you do with it. You vote with governance, you can stake, but you don't really get any rewards. So it's just a giant miss for me. I don't understand. As far as the protocol is concerned, it's connected with basically everybody and everything. They're doing everything right from that regard. Matcha, obviously, the strong user-facing exchange, but they're connected with everybody. They're involved with everything. And they ain't going nowhere. I just don't understand the purpose of the token still. Matcha looks and is amazing. Its functionality is great. They even have limit orders now. Its direct competitors probably 1inch as far as DEX aggregation is concerned. And at least 1inch has swap capabilities and AMM pools. ZRX does not have that. As of yet, I don't know if they even have plans to add that sort of thing. But the user interface looks great here. Everything looks best in class, right? I have no slights against the exchange or the protocol whatsoever. This is the staking side of things, and currently a decent amount staked. The rewards are based in ETH on liquidity providers, so it's kind of like AMM pools without impermanent loss, because you just get ETH based on liquidity provided. You're still exposed to the ZRX volatility of the token, obviously, but these rewards are very small relative to DeFi of anything else, right? You can see the oversaturation here on these pools that are profitable. I don't know, it just seems like the math just doesn't make sense to, like, if you're going to buy and hold something purely based on lending and borrowing and APY and whatever else, you're not going to choose ZRX. You're going to choose probably anything else, even USDC. So maybe I just fundamentally don't understand what's going on here, but the numbers don't look good, even though ZRX is connected with everybody. And with EIP 1559 coming, how's that going to affect these rewards? Are they going to get hit significantly as well? My guess is yes. I haven't seen the numbers on that. But if fees go down, I expect fees here to get hit somewhat as well. They do have a governance roadmap. They've had issues kind of establishing use cases for the token for a while. They should have just done a raise without a token. I think they've done raises just for the company, the business. They are attempting to transition to full decentralization, full community treasury management, that sort of thing, which is certainly possible. And you can say, well, we need money to pay the devs. Why don't we use the token ZRX for that? I guess. I mean, again, you can just use stablecoins for this stuff. So it's a bit of a mystery what the real use case of this even is. Like I said, you can vote on stuff. So this is probably the single most important use case. It doesn't get a lot of votes if there are 1 billion tokens in circulation. Most of this stuff doesn't get voted on by a majority of those tokens circulating. And if you dig into these votes, sometimes it'll say who voted. It's usually the same people voting over and over again. Very select group of people that are paying very close attention to these votes. Not unlike any local government in the human world, where very few people pay attention to this stuff on a day-to-day basis. But the issue here is if you disagree with something, you can fork off. Many protocols have done so. They haven't necessarily been as successful from a protocol perspective as ZRX, or a token perspective. At least ZRX is even in the conversation. If I listed off some DEXs that have forked off of ZRX over the years, you'd say who? Like, you'd have no idea who they were if you weren't around during that time. So I just wish there was more to do with the token. There's just nothing to do. You know, what is the impetus for me to buy and hold it other than hoping the number go up, right? That's ultimately what this is about. If it's not a store of value, if it's not a medium of exchange, if it's not a unit of account, what is it exactly? This is the DEX tracker. If you're a DEX, let's look at the volumes. If you look at the gray and orange slices here. Together, these get about equal volume to 1 inch, although it's hard to separate out because everybody's like aggregating with everybody. How much volume is double or triple counted amongst all this stuff? It's very clear that Uni is going to be most of this pie most of the time on Ethereum. Sushi and the rest of the bunch have to go multi-chain in order to continue to be competitive. I doubt Uni ever goes multi-chain. They are ETH maxi through and through, most likely. But as far as DEX aggregation is concerned, ZRX is up there with 1 inch, right? And if we look at month over month, or week over week in this case, you can see ZRX in that blue sliver on the bottom. Not going to win any volume awards on any given day or week, but it's not going to disappear, certainly. And you can see it on a monthly basis in this gold color here. Looks like May was their all-time high in volume across the board for the most part. And like I said, they're switching to a community DAO, which is great. Love it. I still don't know the token use case or the purpose. If we look at the token on-chain stats for transactions per day, they're basically sitting at lows, multi-year lows, however you want to consider that. Most of these spikes have been related to listings, either on Coinbase or Binance or wherever else. All of them are sort of one and done, speculation related, price related, not a lot of organic activity on chain just because there just isn't, right? There isn't a reason to move it around, so you're really not going to. Average transaction value is peaking with pricing coming back down. So even here, despite very few transactions, average transaction values haven't picked back up. Just not a whole lot of activity going on. NVT still looks bullish. This is on-chain utility relative to market cap. And this will look bullish for basically everything right now because everything's sold off so significantly. That's part of it. The other part of it is I don't think NVT is really tooled for most of the DeFi stuff. Here's active addresses, which basically look like transactions per day. Just not a lot of continuous uptick in activity. Not a lot going on across the board. You can also lend or borrow ZRX through Compound. Smaller market, but it's there. You can lend it through Aave, one of their smaller markets, but it's there. And it's also on MakerDAO. Again, one of their smaller markets, but it's there. So as long as these tokens, like BAT is another example where it could just be a stablecoin. Sorry, guys. Even though I don't think there's a reason that it exists, the fact that it's sort of entrenched and ingrained into this stuff across the board in the DeFi borrowing and lending means it probably doesn't go anywhere anytime soon unless it gets like delisted, right? Getting delisted from this would make it even less of a use case. If I can't even lend it out and then the borrow or the staking rewards decline, what else do you have besides hoping you're just buying and holding? So I don't know. I just don't understand. Never will until something else happens. I thought staking would have better rewards initially, I guess, years ago when they announced that. Just hasn't really come online. As far as technicals are concerned, pretty much everything across the crypto altcoin-wise is getting ready for a mean reversion back to sort of the breakdown. In this case for ZRX, it could be 135 to 150. On the cloud, it's showing this edge-to-edge move on the 12-hour. Volume has picked up considerably. This is a multi-month volume high on Binance and a lot of alts on Binance. So it almost looks like somebody just went across the board and just bought everything. Everything looks similar, so that makes sense from like an algorithmic perspective. But this is definitely a decent setup risk reward wise. Your stop loss could be 66 cents, 60 cents, any of these lows here. Ultimately, definitely 50 cents would be a hard stop with a target of 135 to 150. So that's a decent risk reward profile. On the 5200 side of things, even this mean reversion is still like $1.10 back to the 200-day moving average. It avoided this 35 to 50 cent range, 60 cent range, at least in the near term with a bounce along with everything else. But this is just unlikely to move on its own ever unless something happens differently than is currently happening. Maybe they go towards KYC AML pools that require ZRX to onboard. I don't know. Like something needs to happen in order for me to get more bullish fundamentally on the coin itself. But overall, trend is still bearish and will be bearish until it's back above that 200-day moving average, currently at around 110. On the BTC side of things, it's basically range bound between 2K sats and 4K sats. Not really anything exciting or tradable, even though there is this edge-to-edge move very similar to the USD pair. And it looks like it's well on its way to move between 2100 to 2800 sats. Smaller risk-reward profile, but the setup is still there. And on the ETH pair, it recently hit all-time lows with a pretty big bullish divergence. And there's kind of been two ranges, I guess, for the ZRX ETH pair over the past 2 years, right? And again, there's just nothing. You can't convince me to hold ZRX over ETH. You just can't. And the chart says it all, right? Like, it's only been down really over the past couple of years. Hasn't been above the cloud. Hasn't been above the 200-day moving average. If anything, it's so oversold to this point with a bull div that's very likely to just bounce and rubber band somewhere. Huge TK disequilibrium. You can see how that worked out previously. It has these long, slow grinds, and then eventually a bunch of people step in and say, all right, it's oversold enough. They buy it real quick, get out probably, and just wait for another multi-month grind. It just hits these highs, stagnates, grinds. So it's very possible that this just pops up randomly, does really well one day, and then that's it for a while. Lastly, I'll just mention the ETH-BTC fund and DeFi portfolio. I trade for Techemy Capital, Enzyme.finance. ZRX was a part of this at one point in time, the DeFi portfolio, and based on the USD pair, like I'm going to add this today to the portfolio. It looks like a decent risk reward. This one's based less on TA than fundamentals. I do have the capability of lending this stuff out as well through Aave Comp or Yearn. You can see that even ZRX I can get 2%, right? So it's not like zero, but it's something, and the rewards are in comp, which is appreciating faster than ZRX. So that's some of the math that goes behind the decision-making process, at least. That's part of it, right? The reason I doubled down on the BAL position a few days ago is because I was getting 15 to 20% APY, which is absurd. So sure, right? The chart looks decent. It's probably going to go up. Let's do it. And I've also been adding to the ETH-BTC positions. So with all these, you can see AUM allocation, performance, trades, deposits, withdrawals. You can send Ether USDC here if you want, or you can just watch what I'm doing. You can see it's all done through DEXs, mostly Paraswap, some Kyber, some ZRX on occasion. That's all I have for this one. Like, dislike, comment, share, subscribe. Happy trading.